Matyansi, the blacksmith who walked into the wrong night. A long time ago, when paths were still guided by memory and firelight, in the village of Kyotera, deep within Rakai district, there lived a man named Matyansi Butyampa. For the sake of those who listen today, we shall call him simply Matyansi. Matyansi was a blacksmith, and not an ordinary one. He shaped iron the way a potter shapes clay, patiently, respectfully, as though the metal itself had a spirit that needed coaxing rather than force. Spears, arrows, knives, machetes, hoes, tools of war, and tools of life alike passed through his hands and emerged balanced, sharp, and alive. The craft ran in his blood. His father before him had stood over the same fire, had taught him from childhood how to read the color of heated iron, how to listen to its cry under the hammer, how to know when to strike and when to wait. By the time Matyansi became a man, his skill had already outgrown his village. People came from far. Some walked days just to own a blade made by Butyampa's son. Matyansi was respected. He was humble. He was known as a family man, married to a beautiful and gentle woman named Naki, whose kindness was spoken of with the same admiration as his craft. Their home was steady, their hearth warm, their children well fed. He was not reckless. He was not greedy. He was not foolish, or so it seemed. One early Friday morning, as mist still clung to the ground and the birds had only just begun their songs, Matyansi stepped into his workshop to light the fire. Before the bellows could breathe life into the coals, he heard his wife's voice from the compound. "Matyansi," she called, "you have visitors." Visitors were nothing new. Strangers often arrived with requests for tools. He answered calmly that he would join them shortly and asked her to entertain them. Naki understood immediately. In Buganda culture, a visitor, no matter how small their request, must never leave on an empty stomach. When Matyansi emerged, he found not an ordinary customer, but a man of bearing and authority. After introductions, it became clear. This was a mutaka, a special appointee of the king from the distant land of Kuki. Matyansi felt both honored and cautious. The mutaka explained his request. Metal beads crafted with precision and beauty to be gifted to his new bride during the coming harvest nuptials. Ornaments, they were difficult. They were time-consuming. They were profitable. They agreed on payment, cowrie shells enough to secure Matyansi's household for many seasons, and sealed the deal. When the mutaka departed, leaving Matyansi responsible for delivering the ornaments himself, pride swelled in the blacksmith's chest. But when he turned, he caught the look on his wife's face. It was not joy. It was fear. "Why do you look at me like that?" Matyansi asked gently. "This is one of the greatest commissions of my life." Naki shook her head. "Do you not hear what people say about Kuki?" she asked. "The stories?" Matyansi smiled, though uneasily. Stories had followed that village like shadows, whispers of things that happened after sunset, of disappearances, of customs too old and too dark to explain. Some men refused to marry from there. Some families forbade their daughters from even speaking the name. But Matyansi was a man of iron and fire, not rumor. "These are tales for coward," he said, dismissing her fears. "I have never seen proof." Naki was not convinced, but the fire was already lit. When the day of travel arrived, Naki packed his belongings carefully. The ornaments were placed in a small metal box, wrapped securely. Water was sealed in animal skin, yams prepared for the road. She pleaded once more. "Send a messenger," she begged. "Do not go yourself." To calm her, Matyansi took his younger brother Buka and his dogs Madongo and Kanga. They set off before sunrise. The first day passed peacefully. They rested in Tanga village, slept beneath trees, fire crackling softly as the dogs curled beside them. But on the second evening, as Kiagwe loomed ahead and daylight bled from the sky, the air began to change. An old woman warned them. "The soil here does not rest at night." Matyansi did not ask what she meant. He should have. Night did not fall. It collapsed. One moment the forest still carried the last traces of dusk, the faint blue glow between tree trunks, the distant call of a night bird testing its voice, and the next, darkness pressed down like a heavy hand. It was thick, unnatural, as though the sky itself had lowered to suffocate the earth. After crossing the small stream, everything changed. The water behind them stopped murmuring. The wind came suddenly, not wandering, not playful, but sharp and intentional. It cut through bark and cloth, sliding along skin like a blade that had learned patience. Leaves that had rested quietly all evening began to tremble, not with movement, but with warning. Madongo whimpered first, then Kanga. If you listen to stories like this, stay close. These are not told once. Subscribe so you don't miss the ones that come after. Their tails tucked low, their bodies pressed close to the ground, teeth chattering, not from cold, but from recognition. Animals know what humans pretend not to. Matyansi felt it then. Fear did not announce itself. It rose slow, cold and invasive like water seeping into a cracked pot. His chest tightened. His tongue went dry. His heart began to pound, not fast but heavy, each beat echoing loudly in his ears, drowning out all other sound. The forest stopped listening. Crickets fell silent. Frogs swallowed their songs mid-note. Even the trees seemed to lean away, as if making room for something older than them. Then they appeared. At first they were only shapes, wrong shapes, bending where they should not bend, standing where no path had invited them. One stood draped in bark cloth from head to foot, the fabric hanging stiffly, unmoving despite the wind, as though it were not cloth at all but a second skin. The other was naked, its body wrapped only in dry banana leaves that rattled softly, producing a sound like distant laughter choked by dirt. The smell came before the sight fully settled. Rot, old rain, something long buried and recently disturbed. The air thickened, growing heavy and difficult to breathe, pressing against Matyansi's lungs until each breath felt borrowed. His legs refused to move. His hands, though clenched into fists, felt detached, no longer his. Buka took one step back. That was all it took. The bark-clothed figure did not walk. It shifted as though space itself bent to bring it closer. The banana leaves whispered louder now, circling, scraping, their dry rattling drilling into Matyansi's skull. His thoughts scattered, his prayers tangled. His body remained upright, but his spirit began to tear loose, stretching painfully, as though something was pulling it away, while flesh stubbornly stayed behind. Buka tried to speak. No sound came. When the hands reached for him, they did not grab. They claimed. Buka's body lifted slightly, not dragged, not thrown, just taken, as easily as mist rises from water at dawn. His eyes met Matyansi's for a single breath of time, wide and pleading, already knowing there would be no rescue. Matyansi watched, unable to scream, unable to run, unable to die. Helplessness swallowed him whole, cold and complete, leaving nothing behind but awareness. His soul recoiled, tearing inward, while his body stood as a useless shell beneath the trees. Then the wind stopped. The leaves fell still. The forest exhaled. Darkness closed in, not the darkness of night, but the darkness of forgetting. And Matyansi knew, deep in his bones, that something sacred had been violated, and something irretrievable had been taken. Then, nothing. Morning came slowly, as though the sun itself feared what it might uncover. Mist clung low to the ground, heavy and unmoving. Matyansi awoke with a violent gasp, his body stiff, his mouth dry, his heart pounding as if it had been running all night without him. For a moment he convinced himself it had been a dream, one of those cruel dreams born of exhaustion and travel. Then he called out, "Buka!" Only silence answered. The fire they had lit the night before had burned itself into ash. Madongo and Kanga sat rigid, tails tucked low, eyes fixed on the trees as if expecting them to move again. They did not bark. They did not whine. They mourned. Matyansi staggered to his feet, dread sinking into his bones. He searched the clearing, then the nearby bushes, then the path they had taken the night before. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle. Only one thing lay where his brother had slept. A single banana leaf, dry and brittle, cracked down its spine. Matyansi fell to his knees. In Buganda, there are many kinds of death. Some allow mourning, some allow burial. But there are others, deaths so wrong that even the earth refuses to acknowledge them. This was one of them. He did not scream. His voice had left him. He pressed his forehead to the ground and stayed there until the sun rose fully, until birds dared to sing again. By mid-morning, people from nearby homesteads gathered. They listened in silence as Matyansi spoke, his voice hollow, his eyes empty. The elders exchanged looks. None of them asked questions. They already knew. They took him to a mukongozi, a spiritual guide old enough to remember when such nights were common. Herbs were burned. Water was sprinkled. Words older than kingdoms were spoken. But some things cannot be undone. The musezi does not kill the body, the old man said softly. It takes what anchors a man to daylight. Matyansi was cleansed, yes, but cleansing is not the same as restoration. That night as they slept, Matyansi dreamed of dancing feet, of rattling leaves, of laughter that scraped against his skull like stone on stone. From that day on, he was no longer whole. Matyansi continued to kuki. What else could he do? He delivered the ornaments as promised. The mutaka admired the work, praised the precision, and paid every shell agreed upon. There were songs, ululations, celebration. But Matyansi did not eat. He did not smile. The bride admired the beads around her neck, unaware that they had been carried through a night that devoured a man. When Matyansi returned home, Naki ran to him with relief only to stop short. Her husband's shadow no longer behaved as it should. Sometimes it lagged behind him. Sometimes it leaned in directions his body did not. At night he woke screaming. During the day he worked furiously, hammer striking iron long after it should have cooled, sparks flying wildly. His tools began to crack. His blades lost their balance. People noticed, customers stopped coming, and then the children began to fall ill. One night, as the moon hung low and red, Matyansi heard the sound again. Leaves rattling, feet that did not touch the ground. He rose from his sleeping mat and walked outside. Naki followed, calling his name, terror clawing at her chest. At the edge of the compound stood the figures half seen, half felt, bark cloth, banana leaves, hollow laughter. This time, Matyansi did not freeze. He stepped forward. I have paid, he said. I gave my brother. I gave my peace. What more do you want? The musezi tilted its head. A voice came not from one mouth, but many. You walked where men are warned not to linger. At dawn, villagers found Matyansi alive, but changed. His hair had turned white. His eyes no longer recognized faces. He never spoke again. Matyansi lived many years after that, wandering the edges of villages, avoiding fire, flinching at drums, whispering to shadows that followed him too closely. His wife raised the children alone. His forge went cold. And to this day, elders warn travelers. Do not sleep where paths intersect without greeting the land. Do not laugh at stories told by those who survived. Do not mistake silence for safety. And when someone loses themselves both at home and on the road, the old people shake their heads and say, Yagenda no musizi. He went with the night dancer. Then they fall silent, because some stories are not meant to end loudly, only to be remembered. Not every story ends where it should. Subscribe to this channel and walk with me to the next one, every Tuesday.